Hey, here we are again with reestablishment. And we got a very interesting topic today that I think most people can relate to. And I think that it's something that could be very valuable for you wherever you're at in life and where you want to go in life. And so today we're going to talk about um, business and not just business, but is business a passion or are you just doing it for a job? Is business really something where you can be better than yourself? Have you put yourself into it? I heard a guy years ago who said, passion rooted in purpose and executed in pride. And I've always tried to do that. If you're a person of business, is that where you're at? Do you try to do your very best? Is it your passion? And if it is, what's your purpose? Why did you originally get in that? And so we're going to talk to somebody today that's going to help us unravel these, figure it out, and maybe help you on your journey. And his name is Alec. Alec, welcome today. Glad you're here today. And let's start about your journey in business and where did it begin and how did you get to where you are today?
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, number one. And also, it started at an early age when I was around 8 years old. I delivered flyers around a apartment complex to pay
So
for.
you're that guy.
I'm that guy.
You're that kid I used to see.
Yep, I'm that guy who would knock on doors and give them the announcement of here's what's happening in our apartment community. And then it evolved to where, I was a lifeguard. I owned a painting business, put myself through college. I worked for a CPA firm for about 5 years to learn the mechanics of business. No, I'm not a tax guy, but I do understand taxes. And then for the past 20, 25 years, I've really owned my own business and tried to find ways to help others um, understand the mechanics of business as well as understand where their passion is in business and help them execute on that.
And not just business, but you said something to me, and I haven't even told you this, that was pretty interesting, is how do you get out of business?
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that you've been able to help. If people don't have a end plan, if you own a business when you're ready to retire, or you want to move to something else, what do you do with it? What's your end game? And a lot of people don't think about that. And you've got some good strategies and things about that. But in your time in business, um, you see it for what it is. It's a means to an end of maybe it's something you enjoy doing and put a lot of purpose into it, but maybe not all the passion it could be. Sometimes you get a little bogged down with the day to day thing. Um, and also, what are the points that really make a business thrive? And I think you and I have really hit on that since you and I met, and I believe it was kind of divine that you and I have actually become friends. I consider you a friend. Is that we're learning things about each other, and that you really do want to help people succeed. You do a lot of coaching, you do insurance work, you do a lot of different things within your framework of your current business. But I see your heart where you really want to help people be better than what they are. I know one of the things that you want to do too is even in the insurance world, it's more than just selling insurance, but it's about what can insurance principles, principles for your company do for you. You want to be more than just that guy. You want to be one that helps people grow. And so, one of the ways that you and I have talked about is what are some principles, and we hear at reestablishment, that's what we do. We want to reestablish fundamentals. And, you have a really cool take on fundamentals, fundamentals of a business, fundamentals of a work plan. Where do those fundamentals come from? And then how do you integrate those within the business?
Yeah, I think the passion of being a business owner or working in a business, fundamentally has to be there, and they're guided by certain principles, whether you grew up with them or you found them later in life or whatever it might be. And who you employ will share those principles, whether you realize it or not. You know, number one. Number two, how you deploy them and how you implement them in your business will now help your company grow, and whatever that means. And we see it in big companies all the time. You have technology companies that are doing massive innovation, and how they treat their workers is very different in each of the companies.
Interesting. I was raised in a business family. My dad was an entrepreneur. And so I grew up in that. Then after college, I ended up into government work. And it's a lot different in that sector. When I retired from government work and went back to the private sector, there was almost a feeling as if I had just graduated high school and I was at my graduation. They said, the world's your oyster, go out and get it. It was almost a sense of relief where I was able to go back in the private sector and just tear it up. There was no restrictions. You can be as big or as little or whatever. But I think you're right on. And if you're going to have employees or you're going to reach people through your company, how do you treat them? How do you relate to them? What does those relationships look like? And how do you foster them and make them lasting? And so some of these things that I think a lot of times we take for granted, we do networking, we do coffee breaks. We'll go to networking events where it's real quick. You have hors d'oeuvres and you move around the room or whatever. But how do you really make an impact on people? And so you've seen some things that are common denominators. And so share a couple of those with us that you think can really change people's companies.
Yeah, I think a lot of business schools, MBA programs, they talk about, your values, as a fundamental tenor of how you run your business and how you find your business. And I think defining those early on in a company is very important. So one of the values for our company is, and for myself, is servant leadership. I'm a big fan of servant leadership. Just like Jesus washed the disciples' feet, I want to do the same thing for people that I do business with. I want to help them. Period. It's not about making money. It's about helping the business. And
The
helping
money
the community.
comes.
By
If
default,
you do,
if you do it right,
the money comes.
that's right.
I think you just said something really interesting. It reminded me of a couple companies that I know who their mission statement and their values are spot on, but the people at the top are not living it.
That's right.
And so I think, maybe one of the things that those that are listening to us today, maybe you should go back in your original documents from your company, take a look. Maybe a good time to see, is my values today what they were when I started the company? Is my branding consistent with my values? Because I think a lot of people get away from that on their branding and lose some values. Have you compromised your areas of your company that you probably wouldn't have done 5 years ago to be able to be where you think the company should go? And you said something interesting that a lot of these values, a lot of these things, the servant leadership comes from the Bible. And you and I are brothers in Christ. And so I believe that whether somebody loves Christ or doesn't, whether somebody believes in Christ or doesn't, whether somebody is Jewish, atheist, Buddhist, it doesn't matter. These principles are universal.
That's right.
And I think servant leadership would be a good place to start. Even if you're not a person of faith, go check out the Bible for principles that can help you in your business. And I think it would be a good place to go. Wisdom is wisdom. If I said, look both ways before you cross the street, and I started a religion on that, other than maybe the Aborigines, most people could probably subscribe to my tenet. Look both ways before you cross the street, right? Yeah. So there is wisdom to be found in different places and different things. But I think as we look at business, that servant leadership, those biblical principles are a good place for people to start.
Yeah, and I think to expand upon that, I think there are great groups that help a leader as an individual join peer groups, executive peer groups, right? And those are great for sure. What I find challenging is there's not a mechanism for them to really translate that. And how do I bring that back to business? How do I help? You know, um, my high school student that's interning with me understand that we have values in business and we're not here just to make money. Because there's a bad rap on business and it's about just making money, and that's not really true. There's two purposes. There's ability to make money. Paying to
Right.
Caesar what Caesar's, and there's ability to have a business that also helps serve others or as a ministry, which is paying to God what's God's.
Right.
And I think those two are very appropriate in business. Now, how much you want to profess that is up to you, and how much you want to believe that is up to you. But I believe when you have those two in alignment, along with the sprinkling of servant leadership, it really helps your business grow and prosper. For example, you're in the trades, right?
Right.
You know that developing talent is very challenging right now.
Yes.
Period. And I don't know what your status is of developing talent, but I do know the trades are very difficult. So how do you attract youngins to come into the trades? It can't just be because of money. While they can make a lot of money, it has to be some other reason because
Yeah.
it's not easy work.
So it's interesting. We're in an interesting time where, and I do partner with technical colleges,
Mhm.
and so my trade has a 4-year apprenticeship. And so what we do is we partner with the college, but what I do is I take the time to hire them through and sponsor them through the apprenticeship, and then I try to take personal time and mentor them.
Perfect.
So I bring them in and say, okay, you know this, but do you know why? Or what is the potential down the road? If it's just for money, I may not be the right company for you.
Yep.
If you're looking at where you can make the most dollar, maybe I'm not your guy. If you're looking for a family, if you're looking for a group that will sponsor you, my company is 64 years old. So if you're looking for a company you know is going to be there, you'll have a good career,
Mhm.
then maybe that's something that, how do you put the dollar amount on that? And you try to mentor them as much as you can. And, I've seen some older folks that, even in my own companies, that have come to me and said, why don't you just fire them? And I said, well, that's the easy way out.
It is.
How about I don't fire them and we try to mentor them and build them up and make them who I thought or think they can be. Maybe I think they can be more than they think.
Mhm.
I remember one time, I have these buildings that I rent out. They're industrial, like a small industrial park. And a couple of my tenants, I remember they're having problems making the rent because of the economy and the sectors they were in. And they were just very grumpy and just
Mm.
really tough. And I remember going to them and saying, just so you know, I pray for you every day. Whether you accept it or not, that's up to you. But I pray for you every day because I think you're better than what I'm seeing, that you're better than this. And what was interesting is one of them almost got angry, looked at me like I slapped him across the face.
Mm.
And we had an exchange that actually calmed down. It was friendly. Basically, what I found out is his whole life, he had been labeled as by his dad, you're no good for nothing. You'll never amount to anything.
Mm.
And his whole life, he's been fighting that label. And then I come around and say, no, you're better than what I see. And just giving him some hope
Yep.
and giving him some, not even direction. It's his company, but just saying, I believe in you, not just for your rent. I believe in you as a person.
Yep.
Really made a difference.
No, I think compassion is tremendous. I think having compassion and the ability to help others is a fundamental principle. In because if you don't, then you're a mechanic. You're just a mechanical business that's making money, which is in theory fine.
Yeah, where
But
where do you think a company, let's say a company is good and they're doing well,
Mhm.
always room for improvement.
Mhm.
And we'll give people your information in a minute
Mhm.
on how they can contact you for more ideas
Yep.
and information. And I love the name of your company. It's Integrity. I mean, that right there says kind of where you're coming from.
Mhm.
So your value is actually on your shirt.
Mhm.
Like you're wearing Integrity.
That's right.
So you really have to live what your company is. But where would be a good place for a company to start to maybe say, have my values changed or should they change? What would be some good tips for them to start?
Yeah, I think you hit on the nail on the head. Is the people at the top who run the company, they have to practice it, they have to believe it. So they have to do some self reflection and understand what their values are. And if they feel misaligned with their company, they got to realign. So number one, that's the first thing. The number two is just having a discussion with people in a sounding box that can be agnostic, and really just kind of ask the stupid questions. That's what we call it in our company,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of companies right now don't know where they're going in 5 years. They don't know how to get out of the trap, as we call it, the business. And it's actually a lot easier than they think it is. But they have one pathway, you know.
That right there is huge. I'm going to ask you to say it again because I think a lot of companies, when they lose their passion, they get caught in their own trap because this is the way we've done it. I know there's another way. I'm scared,
Mhm.
maybe to maneuver or shift. But say that again because I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, when you feel trapped or boxed in, it's very difficult to make decisions, and you need people around you who can help with that process. I mean, that's really how integrity got started. Most of our challenges with our clients were not in the accounting or finance realm where I come from. It was in the HR and how do I do my people and how do I help scale the company, and it involves people. And then, of course, technology came in quite a bit nowadays. But the ability to step back and have group in your company and outside your company that can kind of bridge that gap of where do we want to go, how are we going to get there. Most companies don't realize they don't have to sell their company outright. They could actually create a plan to hand it off to their employees if they want, or bring in target employees to take over the company. Mentoring and growing and developing and letting the legacy go on of a 64-year business or a
Yeah.
5-year business is a tremendous victory for what you want to do in business. And how do you do that? Don't get dissuaded by all the technical jargon. You just need to have a conversation of what's comfortable for you.
It's kind of like, and I've done this where I have a small group of people that are my sounding board that I can just go and say, I'm thinking about this. What's your opinion?
Mhm.
I've got, besides my wife, who does work for
Very
our
important to
company.
include wife.
Yes. Besides her, I have one other employee who's been with the company very, very long time. And then I have a couple guys outside the company that look in. They really don't know the mechanics. And I say, well, I'm thinking about this or I'm going to do that and want to see how they look at me.
Yeah.
What they raise their eyebrows, they say, that sounds pretty cool. So I think it's important and, good business sense. Years and years ago, I went to a leadership school. And one of the things they said to be a good leader is surround yourself with people that are good in the areas where you're weak.
Mhm.
And I've tried to do that. It's kind of like when you're in sports, you should always play somebody that's better than
That's
you
right.
to up your game. And I think that that's very, very important.
And not only that, you have to practice the art of confession when you're going to other people for advice.
Mm,
Do not go to other people for advice and always project yourself as the number one guy in the room.
mm,
Because you need to be humble. You need to come into the room and say, "Listen, I've had the worst day in the world. Johnny over here, love him to death, but I can't get him to do this. And Susie's doing this and can't do that. And, you may find your skill is in dealing with people, your skill is to do something else, or your skill is great on mentoring people, but you give too much,
right.
because there's a point where you give too much. And you need people around you to say, you're doing great,
I've
or
been
you need to
frustrated
correct this.
where I've gone out on a limb for some folks. And then at some point in time, I'm like, okay, well, not that I deserve it, but I have an expectation
Hmm.
of I need something back. Like this can't be an empty hole.
Yep.
That there needs to be growth. And the Bible talks about casting pearls before swine. And so I've gotten frustrated before where I think I've really poured into somebody, and I go, okay, when do I get mine? Not personally, but the company. When does the company get
Yeah,
ours
that's right.
back from that growth? And that gets a little frustrating. But I think it's really important that when you do ask those questions of folks, that as a leader, if you're in charge of the company or even in an executive position, that you do step back and humble yourself and say, I am not
Right.
at this point. I need help, or I need open-eyed advice. Am I doing it right? Where can I grow? What do I do? I know for a while there was a thing called the 360-degree evaluation.
Mhm.
Were you familiar with that?
Oh, very familiar with it.
So it was kind of neat. I think it worked well for a while, and then it started to get skewed where people found a way to abuse it.
Mhm.
But I think, and what that is where if you're mid-level or upper-level management, you ask those, I hate to say below you, those that work for you, you ask them to evaluate you.
Yep.
And some people couldn't do that.
Mhm.
But I think it's very good to take that reflection from others and
Well,
learn from that.
well, and to do that, you have to have the right philosophy in your company and culture in your company to do that. You have to have the ability for people to speak openly without recourse.
Right.
It's interesting watching the evolution of HR. We're
Yeah.
we're a payroll, HR, insurance. That's what we do. But it's interesting to watch it evolve. It used to be, hey, a bridge between the employer and employee. Then it became very employer focused, or sometimes very union focused and
Right.
negotiating with unions, and sometimes very employee focused. And the owner gets frustrated and say, "Why do I have an HR person?" So you have to have that function that allows employees to not to do gossip and cooler talk, but allows them to understand, like, listen, the owner really wants this company to grow, and your managers really want you to grow and prosper. But you can't do that if you don't have values of practicing that every day of, yeah, we believe in mentoring and here's how we do it, or we believe in
Right.
servant leadership, here's how we do it, or we like stupid questions because they lead to great answers. Those are things that you want to make sure you focus on.
Yeah, and I think that's so very important. Tell me about the cross that you're wearing,
Yeah,
because that does play into good business practice.
yeah. Oddly enough, I was traveling to one of our partners up in Michigan. Mark, he's a really good guy. He handed me this cross and let me know that it's about servant leadership. And it was at a time that I was actually in a crossroads as myself. Of, like, is this business really the right business for me? Am I really doing the right thing? And it was odd. The timing that God puts in your life is very odd sometimes. I call them whispers from God. Um, so the cross represents, my heart is with Jesus, and I believe in the values of servant leadership. It comes from John, where he washed his feet, the feet of the disciples. And they, washed his feet, and always be humble to other people. And I think that's lost in business. I think it's a great um, trait in business that's been lost a bit.
Yeah.
When I come into a client or a prospect, I'm not there to sell them anything. I'm there to figure out what your challenge is and how can I help you, whether I earn revenue off it or not. Hopefully they recognize us well enough to where they say, "Oh yeah, I want to do business with you."
Yeah.
What's the difference between doing business with a company that believes in servant leadership versus a company that's just trying to earn your business and make money off of you?
Yeah.
I think that's wrong. What's wrong with our industry? And that's why we're
No, I agree. And
we're
that's what
bringing it
sets you
out.
apart.
Mhm.
The thing today as we wrap it up is um, all of these things that we've talked about, you can find them in the Bible.
Mhm.
You can find them by watching the life of Jesus,
Mhm.
how he lived, how he operated. Um, and, he was able to take the loaves and the fishes and feed 5,000 with one kid's meal.
Right.
He was able to multiply that. And God can do that for your business.
Mhm.
God can do that in your life and help you out. And so today, a reestablishment, we want you to take a step back, maybe take a fresh look at your companies.
Mhm.
Have your values, are they still appropriate in where you're at in life? Or are you living appropriate to the values that may be the right ones to go for? And maybe take a look at realigning. If you want to know more from Alec, just get with Otegrity, tell them how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can go to our website, otegrity.com. You can email me directly at alec, ALEC, at otegrity.com. Or you can call me on my cell, 813-453-9613. If you have challenges, all it costs is a cup of coffee. I'd be happy to talk to you. I believe, a conversation can change your outlook very, very, very
Absolutely.
well. Yeah.
And thank you for being here today.
No, thank
And
you.
thank you for being a friend. I consider you a friend.
Thank you.
We've had some good conversations, and we're doing that. We're taking a look at our companies and what do we do and how do we go and what's the best course. So we want you to be blessed. We want you to be bigger and better and stronger and healthier and more productive than you've ever been. There is hope, and his name is Jesus Christ. Give him a try. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Raise your hands up. Raise it up. Reestablishment. Leave not incomplete.
With Kingdom Business Network, your business becomes a beacon of hope and transformation, contributing to a legacy of global impact. Join us at Kingdom Business Network and be a part of a movement that transcends borders and industries. Discover how you can join today at kingdombusinessnetwork.com. Start your local chapter today.